When Europeans first settled in North America, the land was vast and the work was difficult, with a shortage of labor. White indentured servants helped, but tensions between settlers and former servants led to the search of a new labor source. In the early 17th century, African slaves were brought to the New World, providing a solution to the labor shortage, but also creating new problems. Slaves were found to be cost-effective on large farms growing labor-intensive cash crops like tobacco, sugar, and rice. By the end of the American Revolution, slavery was no longer profitable in the North and was gradually declining. Even in the South, the institution was becoming less useful to farmers due to fluctuating and declining tobacco prices. The decline of tobacco led many farmers to switch to growing wheat, which required less labor and resulted in a surplus of slaves. However, in 1793, Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin brought a significant change. The cotton gin made it easier to textile mills to use the type of cotton most easily grown in the Lower South, leading to a thriving internal slave trade. As the Lower South became more reliant on cotton production, there was a greater demand for slave labor, which was met by the surplus of slaves being sold by Upper South slave owners. When the United States banned the international slave trade in 1808, the demand for domestically traded slaves increased. In the Upper South, the most profitable cash crop became the sale of human lives. By 1860, the South's peculiar institution of slavery was deeply entrenched in the region's economy and society. White Southerners were torn between the economic benefits of slavery and the moral and constitutional issues it raised. They argued that black people, like children, were incapable of caring for themselves, and claimed that slavery was a benevolent institution that kept them fed, clothed, occupied, and exposed them to Christianity. While most Northerners believed that black people were inferior to whites, they questioned the benevolence of slavery. Northern abolitionists, such as William Lloyd Garrison, became increasingly vocal in their opposition to slavery. Educated blacks, including escaped slave Frederick Douglass, also spoke out against the institution, sharing their experiences and advocating for abolition. The Underground Railroad was established by anti-slavery activists to aid slaves in escaping to the North for freedom. Despite being fictionalized, Harriet Beecher Stow's highly acclaimed novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, published in 1852, raised awareness among Northerners about the horrors of slavery and dispelled the Southern myth that black individuals were content as slaves. In reality, the treatment of slaves varied from mild and paternalistic to cruel and sadistic. Families were frequently separated through the sale of husbands, wives, and children, and physical punishment, such as whipping, was not uncommon. The 1857 Dred Scott v. Sanford decision by the United States Supreme Court declared that all blacks, whether free or enslaved, were devoid of citizenship rights and consequently could not file lawsuits in federal court. Furthermore, the Supreme Court went on to assert the Congress had overstepped its authority in the previous Missouri Compromise by lacking the power to prohibit or abolish slavery in the territories. The court also ruled that the concept of popular sovereignty, where new territories could vote on whether to enter the Union as a free or slave state, was without constitutional legitimacy. Consequently, slaves had no legal recourse to object to their mistreatment. After the Dred Scott decision, along with earlier slave uprisings and John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, Southerners grew particularly apprehensive about potential slave revolts, although they were infrequent. Instead, in a form of resistance, slaves would feign illness, engage in work slowdowns, disrupt farm machinery, and occasionally commit arson or murder. Temporary escape was also a common tactic.